Hello everyone, welcome to the last episode of Series 5 of the GBA Lightbulb Sessions. The Great British Entrepreneur Award, in association with BT Skills for Tomorrow, have designed a free live stream series of Lightbulb Sessions to support small businesses and entrepreneurs with insightful and advice-driven sessions, featuring some of the UK's brilliant entrepreneurial minds to illuminate your path to entrepreneurial success. You can find out more about BT Skills for Tomorrow by heading to their website at www.bt.com/skills for tomorrow or by clicking on the link in the comment section. In this session, we sit down with the co-founder of Jack Wills and BCO director, Rob Shaw, where he will share insights and experiences of building a product-focused business. He'll explain why it's vital for startup brands to identify their best sellers, how to identify them, and how to make the most of them. There is an opportunity to ask questions during this session. If you have a question you'd like to ask, you can pop this in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer these towards the end of the session. Please note there will be a poll at the end of the session, and all answers will be anonymous. And with that, I'll pass over to our host today, Francesca James.
Thanks, Chloe. I think it's fair to say you've got that patter down to a T, and I've meant to say it to you, but now we're on the last Lightbulb session. I do sort of get the sometimes the feeling that I'm on a flight because it's such a brilliant, seamless announcement. But welcome everybody to today's session. I know we've got people on Zoom, we've got people on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. My name's Fran. I run the Great British Entrepreneur Awards, but above and beyond the awards, we are a community. And that community has certainly grown a lot in the last couple of years, and we've used online to bring people together and to learn from experts and people who have been there and done that. We're really delighted today to be joined by Robert. Robert's a keen supporter of the Great British Entrepreneur Awards and community. And as Chloe mentioned, co-founded Jack Wills in '99 and was an early investor in pet brand BCO. So we're delighted to be talking to you today, Rob. I know that I gave you a brief introduction, but there's a lot more layers and colour to it than that. So could we start off with a bit of a background to yourself and your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I really feel privileged to be here, Fran. Really, thanks for inviting me. I certainly, I've been lucky enough to be a judge for your competition, and I've been so impressed the last couple of years I've done it with the entries and the talented entrepreneurial community that you have. So really honoured to be really part of your community. I, as you say, I was fortunate enough to be part of the sort of Jack Wills journey. I was one of the founders and really enjoyed that. And like a lot of the people in your community, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a classic entrepreneur, but there are a lot of people that are really interested in business from a very young age. They want to sell things, they want to raise money for charity, they want to get jobs, maybe just in the local pub. And I was definitely like that. You're learning about businesses, interested in what they do. And I got various jobs, and I was always trying to sell things at school. And so when I made friends with a guy at university, and he offered the chance to be part of a new business, I jumped at it. And so we set up our store in Salcombe in Devon. It sounds weird saying it now, but back in last century, you said 1999. But back in the last century, Jack Wills was started, and my empathy with the starting process of a business it comes from that experience really, because it can often be quite a slow start. So I do empathise with that. I had a great success with Jack Wills. We did, we grew. We worked out how to sell stuff. We identified our bestsellers. And we grew the business. I was lucky enough to then invest in various other businesses and get involved with some other really talented entrepreneurs, not least, as you mentioned, this pet brand BCO, which I'm really enjoying being part of today. And we're, as you know, lots of people have got dogs during lockdown and over the last few years. So it's quite a good growth space to be in. So that's me, and hopefully I might give some other thoughts on my experience through this talk.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, look, you know, I can't believe when you say last century, that, you know, it does sound crazy. You couldn't escape Jack Wills in our house growing up. I was probably slightly too old for it, but my younger sister probably had every single one of your bestsellers. And, you know, it was sort of almost cult-like among everybody at her age and her year. So we're here today to talk about bestsellers, how you identify them. So I guess, you know, what would you define a bestseller as? And then, you know, maybe it's obvious, but maybe there's some special knowledge that we can share. But also, how do you go about identifying them?
Okay, so at the very start, a lot of your sort of entries to your awards will be at this stage. Some of them are a lot more established, and a lot of them have got you know, a decent amount of cash behind them. Some won't. So at the very start of your business, you may just feel like you're finding something that works. So initially, the idea of a bestseller might be a bit premature. You're just trying to find something about what you're doing, whether it's a service or a product business, that really works, that gets traction with a customer base. And then perhaps from that, the idea of bestsellers can come out of, you know, what's working. So you're looking for that thing that gets traction. So for Jack Wills, it probably was a good couple of years before we really felt like we had things that we could really hang our hat on and say, yeah, these are going to sell, we better buy more of them. But it's funny, when you're in the sort of the weeds of a business and you're starting up, and there's lots of distractions of, you know, staying afloat, getting stuff to customers, you might miss some of the obvious things. And the idea of bestsellers will come out, but you know, spotting them is important. And we got a massive sort of advice after a couple of years of Jack Wills, where, you know, we did have some products that sort of kept us afloat, and products that kind of started working, but it was a chairman that we brought on board, and he said, look, make more of your bestsellers. So you spot something that works, you buy more of it. You don't just try and sell everything at the same volume. There are going to be some winners, there are going to be some losers, and you should recognize that. But this thing that works, and a bestseller has to work for everyone. So it has to work for your supplier. You have to make enough margin. There's no point in making money off product that you're giving away. You have to take account of all your costs and make sure that what you're offering really works for you. So, and it has to be something that customers feel like they've got a fair value for at the end of the day.
Fantastic, thanks, Rob. Just to remind everyone, I think Chloe's popped something in the chat. If anyone has any specific questions, please do pop them in the Q&A function on Zoom, and we will do our best to answer them during or at the end of the session. You mentioned there, obviously, the potential of it being sort of maybe seeming too premature to identify a bestseller. So, but how important do you think it is for startups to quickly identify at the early stages what might be their bestsellers? I guess it can change when you have the data and stuff behind it, but yeah, how would you answer that one?
Well, definitely finding your thing, finding what's going to get traction with customers is really important. Obviously, you need to find something that works so that you can reinvest in it and convince others to invest in it, perhaps. So that's really key, certainly before your cash runs out. Sometimes businesses have a plan, have clear visibility of what they want to do, and they also have clear visibility. You mentioned data, the digital world and the platforms on which people are selling provide so much clearer data today than perhaps when we started in business. But often, so you need to know to the real sort of SKU level, to the line item level, what is selling, what size, what color, what shape, what spec, what you're selling, what really works. Because the key, the difference between a sort of good seller and a bestseller, isn't just sort of 2 to 1. It could be 10 to 1, 100 to 1. It might be that you really only do sell navy blue hoodies, or and all the other colours that you've got in your range really don't sell. So it's almost really important to understand, or to really understand what's working. You almost really need to try and understand what you've missed out on, because quite often businesses who've only got a limited amount of money, they buy a range of stuff. They might sell out. So have you got an eye on what sold out first? How many could you have sold of something if you'd had it in stock? How much could you have sold of something if it was a little bit cheaper? Could you have even sold it if it was a little bit more expensive? Could it have been thicker, thinner? These sort of little iterations of your product could make all the difference. If possible, and this is part of, to identify your bestsellers at the start, try and get close to your customers. Now, as a lot of products are sold digitally now, people offer reviews, encourage reviews, and that is key. Read the reviews, find out what your customers are saying about your products. Try and collect people's data, so you could perhaps send them a questionnaire. Perhaps ask them face to face if you are serving customers directly. Why do they like the things? What would they like to see more of? So that's probably what I would say.
Yeah, and how did you do that with Jack Wills? Because obviously we are talking 1999. It's a completely different world than we're in now. Now, the access to data points online is far more significant than it would have been. So was that something that you did face to face, or I'd love to hear sort of the real life experience that you had there.
Yeah, well, it might. Yeah, I mean, this was my real formative experience, was standing in a shop, serving customers, having a lot of fun, meeting a lot of fun people in Devon who are on their holidays, kicking back, checking out this new kid on the block, the new clothing store, moaning that we were another clothing store in a very a high street full of clothing stores. But in that instance, in that position, you're seeing firsthand what people touch, what they pick up, what they show interest in and then put down, what they show interest in and then buy. You are having those one-to-one conversations. You are, and because it's a more relaxed environment, perhaps in a sort of resort like that, holiday resort town, you've probably got the time to chat. You're not, and because you're new, people are interested in talking to you, so you can have those sort of conversations. You're also seeing what people are consuming themselves. What clothes are they wearing? What products are they using? So by getting close to your customers in a physical store, it was definitely a real kind of learning curve. And the store was tiny. It was certainly no bigger than this little study here. You couldn't swing a cat in it, and so you wouldn't have sort of missed a customer. You could certainly see them touching the product. And then, of course, over the years, having a close relationship with store managers, people who worked in the store, asking them what they felt and what they saw the customers reacting to the product, was really key.
Fab. And now, obviously, now we're 2022, and the world's pretty different. And you're obviously, it's pet products is now your new business, and what an exciting industry to be in. It's. I think I was saying just before this call, I went out for drinks with a few people last night, and we couldn't stop talking. We were all dog owners and literally could not stop talking about our dogs. So the timing is exciting, but also you've got access to all of these incredible sort of data points. Social media is a different world, in 2022 than it was when you were. when you were building Jack Wills. How has that changed? Because obviously it's not so much now about bumping into customers face to face, particularly over the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, I think it's tremendous what the power of brands and the speed that brands can move now. You're right. When we started, we were in the world of the dial-up modem. Sort of a lot of your, people your age, Fran, or younger, just won't understand, won't remember those, how slow the internet was. Yeah, Jack Wills had a website, but it was pretty clunky. I think to order a product, you maybe sent us an email. There wasn't a sort of automatic ordering system. There wasn't a sort of Shopify platform. We weren't selling through Amazon. And the whole world of social media is as well such a powerful way to market brands. So it is completely different. Conversely though, people were really receptive to direct mail. So we sent out our catalogs. They were quite influential. People found them quite, pleasing to receive. So I suppose the world, has changed a bit. People are receiving stuff so much quicker through their phones, through the internet. But then the expectations are higher. But then, and the feedback's faster now, and it can be, obviously it can be positive or negative. But it's good to hear from customers, pretty quickly.
So does that mean then, because the feedback's faster and the data's more sophisticated, that a bestseller can probably change more rapidly, whether it's with the seasons, and can be recognised by you guys as leading the ones leading the business?
You'd like to think so. I mean, there is still a sort of, there is a product build up. Sometimes products might take a while to take on. They may or may not be successful in different channels and different markets. But I think, certainly the data you get, and people will expect to see, individual, clear data on what they're selling, down to the sort of colorway or size. So it's a lot more sophisticated now.
Thank you. And obviously, we can talk about the things that entrepreneurs ought to do. And I know that we've been looking through the names. I know that we've got a lot of, product businesses on here because of the nature of the talk. But what would you say are some of the common mistakes, maybe mistakes that you've made when it comes to product-focused startups?
There will be one major commonality, I reckon, with a lot of brands that have bought stuff to sell. And that is probably because entrepreneurs, by their nature, must be optimists. But invariably, we buy too much stock. You buy too much stock of the thing that you don't know, but you hope to sell it, but it just doesn't sell, or it doesn't sell quick enough, or you've altered it and changed it or improved it by the time you've sold the original stuff. And that's often because of that little acronym MOQ. The minimum order quantity can be really hellish, particularly for startups. They haven't got the distribution, they haven't got the brand, and yet to work with some of the better suppliers, they will have higher MOQs. So that's one thing I would say is, when you're starting out, until you really learn what your volume, your demand might be, try and pay a bit more for a lower MOQ. Don't necessarily go for the cheapest price. So that's sort of, buying too much stock is a common mistake. The other thing that people do, and this is true across all types of businesses, they need to get a lot of stuff done, and that might be graphic design, it might be building a website, it might be designing a product, it might be all sorts of things, but it might be doing some legal documents, it might be finance, but quite often people feel so reliant on those early stage supporters that they are inclined and quite often give away equity in a way that probably isn't sensible. So you might find that, you've given I might have come across a business that has given away 10% of the equity to a graphic designer for doing their logo or their brand design, and it's probably not sensible to do that, because you are obviously wanting the equity to be in the hands of those that are really driving the business, and want that incentive to grow the business. The other thing I would just say, Fran, is that sometimes in new businesses, people kid themselves about their model. They've got a great product idea. They've got a source for that product, but the margin doesn't really stack up. So they're buying from somebody for X. They want to sell it to a store or a retailer for Y. There really isn't the margin in the middle for them to exist. They would have to charge it far too high a price. So just encourage people to be honest about what things cost and how much they need to make in the long term.
Brilliant. That's great advice. So we touched upon sort of minimum order quantities then, but I guess once you have identified a bestseller, what would be your advice then on how aggressively an entrepreneur ought to scale that up? And I guess, if it is a bestseller and the volumes work to look at higher order quantities that are going to be less per unit, what's your advice? And even if it's, and also experience with that, were there any mistakes that you made? Do you wish you'd scaled up faster, slower?
I think, it is different today. There was lots of D2C brands that are, cutting through with a really clever product, something that captures the imagination, something that succeeds through social media. So I think that it is different to when I started with Jack Wills. We were, we were accepting of a much slower pace of growth, even though for many people, when they discovered Jack Wills, they thought it was an overnight success, or they thought it was really a fast-moving business. It was very incremental, I would say, initially, certainly for a number of years. I'd encourage people to go as fast as they have an appetite for, but realize, if they've got the cash, then great. There are negatives to growing rapidly. Have you got the structures or processes in place? Will the train fall off the tracks, kind of thing, if you go too fast? But go for it. If you've got your moment, just probably accept that it may, your bestseller, your product, your thing might not last forever. So, not that Jack Wills waned in popularity. It still turns over many millions of pounds, I'm sure, but it's products don't last forever. Products, brands, popularity, especially if you've got a very sort of fast-moving D2C product. So just be aware that things change, trends change, and you need to be innovating all the time.
Well, that actually leads me really nicely onto the next question, because I was going to say, we talk about brands, products not necessarily lasting forever. And I was going to say, well, if you've identified a bestseller, should you take it, if it's not broke, don't fix it attitude? Or, is it a continual sort of incremental small innovations, with the changing times and trends? Is that what you did at Jack Wills? Is that what you're doing at Beko?
I think, certainly at Beko, it's all about innovation. They're always trying to find better ways to do things, ways to make things in a more sustainable way. That's the world we're in at Beko. At Jack Wills, if there was a product area that we really liked or that was really working, maybe it was in sweats, so hoodies, track pants, that sort of thing that we were kind of famous for. Every season would be about nurturing some great designs in those product areas. And we didn't know that they were going to be so successful, but based on previous sales, we wanted them and thought that they would be successful because they were areas our customer was comfortable with. So I think, developing, innovating, investing in your bestsellers. Take the iPhone. You know, it's still a black sort of rectangle, but think how that's been nurtured, innovated around by those clever people and the whole of the tech sector. You know, they can't afford to rest on their laurels. They know they've got good products. They know they may have a great product, but they're constantly running to stand still. And I think that's true of our experience at Jack Wills. You're constantly, you know, running to keep up, to stay interesting, to make your products relevant. So it's you know, if you invented a product, and I can think of things like, I don't know, a pot of Marmite or a box of Kellogg's cornflakes or a Barber jacket, some things that look like they never change, but actually, you know, all around them there'll be little innovations going on and people trying to make sure that they're in people's baskets or you know, or relevant tomorrow.
Yeah. Harry asks whether he should focus his whole business around a bestseller product.
It's really difficult to comment, you know, broadly. I think if your whole business, yeah, most product, think about it, a lot of businesses are famous for one thing. So this iPhone, which is obviously a famous product, I've got an iPhone case because I'm always dropping my phone, and it's made by a brand called Pella. And it's a very successful Canadian entrepreneur. And that's what he does. He makes recycled plastic phone cases, and he's been tremendously successful. He is famous and would be happy to be famous for that product, that one product. So I think if you've got a product that works, you know, there are lots of brands in the country that are famous for one product. We've mentioned some of the food products, but you know, think of Hunter Wellies or I don't know, Mars Bar. You've got products and businesses that are really built on one tremendous cut-through success.
Brilliant. Thank you, Harry. I hope that answers your question. If anyone else has got any questions, do pop them in the Q&A box. We did touch upon it briefly earlier, but I'd love to, the question I've got here is, if you're not seeing the desired results from your primary product, is it commonly due to a need to change your marketing strategy, or, you know, might you consider scrapping the product entirely? Hard question to answer.
Again, it will be in the mix. You know, the answer will be a mix. So, what I wanted to say here is the product any good? Is the marketing any good? Are people liking what you offer? And this is where I would mention honesty. I don't mean putting your hand in the till. I mean honesty in terms of objectivity. I think entrepreneurs that are really able to be reflective of their own business, their own shortcomings, their product shortcomings, their marketing shortcomings, and are really honest, are more likely to see the way forward. So you might say, you know, and if your product or your service or what you do is in the words of Del Boy Trotter, you know, only fools and horses work. Well, you know, you've got to be honest about that. There isn't a special kind of customer out there that only, you know, that you need to find to buy your product. Most customers are like you and me, Fran. They're normal people that like things, have got a taste level. They've got a framework of products that are in front of them. They need something with a value proposition that works for them. There isn't a special kind of alien customer out there that's going to like your product, even if nobody else does. So I think that honesty piece is key. So would you tear it up and start again? One thing I would say also is the difference between a success and a failure can be quite small. Now, we often launched a product that didn't work, but the following season, when we tweaked it, made the fabric thinner or thicker or the fit better, or the pattern different, it suddenly becomes a winner. So I wouldn't give up hope if but you will need to iterate your product. You'll need to alter things slightly. And in terms of marketing, marketing isn't a magic wand. You're not going to, as I say, you're not going to reach those special customers that just because the World Wide Web is big and broad, but so you've just got to be honest about the marketing as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Mohammed asks, he's asked, how would I find my ideal customer? So I guess you can sort of answer from your point of view. How have you found your ideal customer? I guess, and you've got offline and online experience there.
Yeah, I think finding your tribe, finding what works for your product, needs to be a sort of somewhat natural thing. There needs to be an interest in your thing. And if you've created it and think that there should be an interest in it, then the passion you have for your product could well spill into your kind of natural instinct on who and how you'll find your customers. Mohammed, so if you think, well, I like this product, I like the way I'm doing things, I think my friends will, or I think my family will, then share that idea, share, and try and get the ball rolling.
Thank you. We've got another question from Sam, who says, I'm a young startup selling products online. What would you say the critical factors are for converting clicks, views, impressions into sales?
I mean, there are a lot more clever sort of digital entrepreneurs than myself, I would have to say. But there are, in terms of digital marketing, it's okay to say you're good at something. It's okay to say your product's good at something. But what I would say is try and get some validation from some customers. If you've got reviews that say this product's good, or I've really enjoyed this service, that validation from other people will probably carry more weight than you just saying this is a great product. So if you can infuse your listing or the way you're selling your product with some kind of commendation from somebody else, I would really try and get at.
Brilliant, thank you. Got another question here. So it's a bit of a long one, so I'm going to read it word for word. So it's from Helen Chapman, from Belly Bambino. We started our brand made in Great Britain, but as part of our scaling up, we're looking to outsource manufacturing and looking at both the UK and further afield. What would you advise today?
Well, you're not alone. It's great to source things in the UK if possible. Jack Wills really did try initially and did buy shirts from Manchester, from Durham, knitwear from Leicester, from Nottingham. We really did try and source things in the UK, but it's hard. Some of the industries, some has come back, some industries come back, but a lot of it has moved abroad. So I don't think you're unwise in looking abroad. There are some great factories in, I'm not sure what you're selling, but there are great garment factories in Portugal, in Turkey, in China. So I would advise, really trying to reach out to manufacturers directly or through expert agents that might, for a fee, help you source product abroad.
Thanks, Rob. Nathan asks how patient you were before making any changes to products.
Well, I guess we had to be pretty patient because we'd sunk most of our money into the first stab at a range and could only really sort of change things on the fringes. So a fashion business is obviously seasonal. And if you were in the world of Jack Wills, we'd sort of plumped on a place that was very sort of annually seasonal. It was only really popular in the summer months. So we had to be very patient in the early years until we had stores in sort of non-seasonal towns, and we had more of an online and mail order business. So I think, yeah, we were pretty patient. The sourcing of product is a challenge, and it's certainly post-COVID quite a challenge to source product quickly. So I think you do have to be patient, but when you've got better relations with suppliers, then you will shorten lead times, and that sort of relationship can really work well.
Thank you. We're drawing to the end of the session now, but I've got two more questions. From your experience, what would you say that successful product-based businesses usually have in common?
Well, as I say, with Beco and at Jack Wills, I was really fortunate to work with some really my co-founder at Jack Wills and founders at Beco. They're really talented people that have got a real passion and a take on a world, on an industry. Most entrepreneurs just have a strong set of opinions. They're really passionate about what they're taking on and why they want to create product in that area. So I think that's a real sort of commonality. I also think that they have a bravery from a really unpromising start. It's quite a scary place, and they are willing to start something, and that is something. They may be willing to give up a good, well-paid job, a career in a more established kind of profession, to start in and be an entrepreneur. Is non-formulaic. There isn't a rule book about it. You're making up your own rules. You're kind of promoting yourself and your business. So I think that sort of bravery and ability to just get started is key. I also think that those that really make it are have the kind of humility to learn, and also a wisdom to kind of get others involved, and know that their skills maybe don't cover everything that they need.
Absolutely. So the overwhelming sort of commonality there is people. It seems to
Definitely.
me.
Oh, definitely. It's been great at Beco. We've taken on some really talented people, and they're allowing us to do bigger and better things. People that are really specialize in something, people who've got an expertise or an experience, people who've learned from bigger players. So it's really exciting to get a team together and realize that one person can't do it all. And I think when you realize that, and you have got the sort of the finances and the business structure that other people can fit into, then you've got a business. Yeah, it's been fun working with the people I do today and the people I've met over the years. It's I'm always learning.
Absolutely. Every day is a school day. And if I can pop you on the spot now, obviously the session title is How to Identify Bestsellers. If I was to ask you for your sort of 3 top tips that we've covered in today's session about finding those bestsellers and making the most of those bestsellers, what might those be?
On bestsellers, I think it's finding something that works, and quite often that involves a lot of luck. I think you can't get away from it. People don't necessarily talk about it, but quite often an entrepreneur needs a bit of luck. But I do believe you can earn your luck. So you work really hard. You're more likely to get lucky. Be honest, and that goes back to what we were saying. You will find your best sellers if you're really honest about a product, why it's working, why it's not working, and then you can get some success. And the other thing I would say is really try and emulate or learn from others, possibly in your field, possibly in a completely parallel field. In the pet sector, we might learn from human food sector, for example. So I think you need a lot of luck. You need to work hard and be honest, and learn from others.
Fantastic. Well, look, that's one of the big parts of what we're building at the Great British Entrepreneurs Community, is that community to allow people to learn from others, like today's session. So thank you so much, Robert, for your time. It's been a real pleasure. And Chloe, if you're there, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Fran.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Rob, and for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us today. It's been great to have you with us. And thank you, Fran, for hosting. As Fran mentioned, this is the last episode of the Lightbulb Sessions. This is the 40th episode and the last. So thank you all for joining us for the last 5 series. It's been great to have you with us, and hopefully our community have shared some valuable insight with you. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's session, we'll be sending out a replay of this recording later on today. You can find the replay and sessions at www.lightbulb-sessions.haysummit.com. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again, Rob and Francesca.